The goal of this course is to allow you to write a story or a book in 30 days. This course functions as a standalone. If you want more information on characters, environment, storyline, world building, and how to create more cohesion in your stories, you'll find further resources in the video's description. This goal intended to allow you to become a better writer in 30 days by presenting you a program applicable to a wide variety of genres and frames. This course approaches writing and editing in synergy by proposing you to edit your book on the first draft every 3 chapters. This course focuses mainly on developmental editing, but notes on proofreading will be included. Finally, this course includes a part on why and how you could develop your own graphical elements, wherever it is, character portraits, environmental composition, and even the book cover. Why you would like to develop your own graphical element will be developed in a section on the synergy between the imagery and the symbolism you'll use in your writing, as all your stories will be based on a system of 4 main themes. The ability to support the writing of your story with graphical elements will allow you to develop and display your vision fully. The aim of this course is to allow you to start your book, to start your project with the intention to finish it. Therefore, this course is scalable up and down depending on the time you have to dedicate to this project. The following scale is an indication of what a beginner can intend to accomplish with a daily time of 30 to 90 minutes in terms of pages. We recommend that you follow it as closely as possible. For example, if you only intend to dedicate 45 minutes a day on your book and you wish to produce a 100 pages book, it's fine. However, spending 60 minutes a day on a 100 pages book would not help you to train you to become better faster. So dedicating this much time for this amount of pages is unbalanced. If you're a beginner, we also don't recommend that you go above 300 pages for your first project. Therefore, if you have 2 hours or 120 minutes per day to dedicate to your project, we recommend highly that you stop at 300 pages and use the extra time to refine it. The following numbers will indicate to you how many characters and how many environments one story should include, according to the time you have to dedicate to it. Feel free to do more if you can. If you plan to dedicate 30 minutes a day to your book, we recommend that you include 4 characters and 1 to 4 environments. This is what we will consider the minimum for producing a book which is diversified enough. Note that you can focus your story on 4 main characters, whichever the amount of pages and whichever the amount of time you dedicate to your book. If you wish to do so, we recommend that you create 4 main characters and that the rest of the cast will be secondary characters, support characters, or antagonists. If you have 45 minutes a day to dedicate to your book, we recommend that you use 4 to 6 characters and 1 to 6 environments. Note that you'll need at least 1 environment to start your story, but 1 environment may be sufficient for the whole story, depending on the genre of story, depending on the frame you're using, and depending on the scale you intend to use. If you have an hour a day, we recommend that you use 6+ character. By 6+, we mean try to use 6 main characters, but if you want to add an additional or even 2, you can. But focus the action on the 6 main characters and up to 8 environments. Note that in most cases, the amount of character will be directly proportional to the amount of environments. Therefore, in a 200 pages book, if you wish to have 8 characters, it's highly likely that you'll need 8 kind of environments in order to make your story more diverse and more surprising. If you have 90 minutes a day to dedicate to your project and your book is 300 pages, we recommend that you use up to 10 characters. in a later lesson, there will be an inflection on this rule. If you ever want to use up to 12 characters and up to 12 environments, if you feel comfortable enough, it will be a possibility and we will give you the tools to do so. Finally, you'll want to use up to 10 environments. Here, 1 to 10 environments correspond to the 10 chapters your story will be composed of. And you can make use of these 10 environments, 1 chapter at a time. Again, it is only the simplest way to write. It is the surest way for you to finish your book. Every indication in this video is meant to help you surefire the ending of your book. The easiest way to improvise is to combine 2 elements. An element of tension and an element of resolution. The element of tension or setup in the case of short stories will be, in most cases, the goal or the role of what you're trying to establish. In the case of a character, the goal of the character will be the tension element. Her actions will serve as a punchline and will have to be compared to a goal every time. Every time the character changes of behavior, take a new habit, it had to be compared to her goal, to match it, to verify the cohesion between the goal and the action. If you want to surprise the public, keep the character's action aligned with her goal, but execute them in a surprising way. The root of improvisation is familiarity. And in the case of the goal is what will set the basis of the character. For an environment, it would be the atmosphere. For an object, it would be its function. You have to establish a balance between what's familiar and what's surprising in order to improvise in an entertaining manner. When it comes to objects, to items, to organizations, you have to compare systematically the original intent of the creator, of the object, of the organization, and its effective use today, because that's where the surprise can appear. If the use, the definitive final use is different from the original intent, that's where the surprise appears. Improvisation is deviation, a deviation from the original intent, from the familiar element, from the tension you've established. So, making it a habit of creating 3 deviation of any kind of object from the original intent for the characters. For example, if you're using archetypes, from the original perception of what the archetype is the best exercise. Trying to create 3 deviation based on function, based on role, based on goal, and based on intent is the easiest way to train you to improvisation. The purpose of allowing you to write a book in 30 days is to allow you to become better faster. To become better faster, you don't need to start more stories. You need to finish more stories. Hence the minimum goal of 100 pages per book. If you have more time to dedicate to this course, to this project, you can go for up to 300 pages on your book. We don't recommend to beginners to go over 300 pages for a first project. If you want to become better faster, you also want to develop a habit of hinting only at the answer. Storytelling is a collective game. You want to play with the public, knowing that you will play with 3 different kinds of public. The public who will want to hear what you're saying, the public who will enjoy what you're saying, the direction, the aesthetic matter. A public who will want to see what you're doing, which is a public who will want to view the symbols you're using. In the early stages, you'll want to write for these 2 kinds of public. The public who's there to appreciate your work, and the public who's there to dig into your work. To become better, faster, or in an easier way, you want to follow a structure and then improvise. Start with the most basic structure, which is composed of 3 fundamental elements. your characters, your environments, and your chapters. Pick 4 characters, pick 4 environments, and 10 storylines, and you'll have the story. From there, you'll implement the principle in the improvisation section, and you'll be able to flexible your story and broaden it. If you want to ameliorate your writing faster, you'll want to start to ask for implementable input. The key here is implementability. Asking for advice, asking for insight without justification will be useless for you. Ask for procedures. If you have a team, if you have friends you can show your work to, ask what they would change, what they want more of in your story, what they would want less of, what they will remember the most, and how they will change the story. The emphasis here is on the procedure. If you don't know how to change your story, you won't be able to. When you publish your work at the end of these 30 days, you want to be willing to ask for systematic insight, not just recommendation on this specific book, on this specific story, but how you would change your writing as a whole. The following editing rules apply to all chapters. Chapters and scene-specific rules of editing will be treated when the corresponding chapters and scenes will be treated. You'll want to edit your text at least twice. The first of edition will be proofreading. A simple grammar and orthograph proofreading would be sufficient. You can proofread each chapter once you've finished it. However, we recommend that you do it only every 3 chapters to minimize hesitation and self-censorship. The first step of developmental editing is to review the cohesion of each of your chapters. Contrary to proofreading, you will not want to edit the developmental part of your chapter every chapter. You'll want to reach the end of chapter 3, chapter 6, and chapter 9. These 3 chapters are crisis chapters. If you have to question the pertinence of any choice in your first draft, you have to compare these 3 landmarks: the crisis in chapter 3, the crisis in chapter 6, and the crisis in chapter 9 should resonate with each other. They will serve as landmarks in terms of relationships evolution and world evolution. Developmental edition is composed of 3 main phases. Checking the data you're giving the public and the data you're giving the characters. Since the public is an extraneous element to the story, she will most of the time have more information than the characters, if the characters are not hiding information. Therefore, in each scene and in each chapter, you have to compare the data which is available to the public and the character and the data which is necessary to the public and the character to understand the plot and advance in the storyline. You also want to manage your transition from one scene to the next and from one chapter to the next. This will be developed in detail from chapter to chapter, but you want to make an habit to envision if one part of your theme, your first theme, which will be developed between chapter 1, 2, and 3, and the rest of the story, as a understandable transition in the next theme. So if you have an understandable transition, for example, between chapter 3 and 4. Finally, you want to make sure you use your map as you intended it to be used. This course will contain a lesson on how to draw a map of your world, a simple map, which you will be able to scale. This map can be used for a single building or it can be used for a country, depending on which scale you want to operate on. What you must make sure of is that you're using your map as you originally intended to, because it's the only way to make sure you're improvising in a sustainable way. Once you've finished your book, the first chapter you want to review is the last one. As a matter of fact, once you're starting your book and you're doing your one pager of your story, which will be one of the first lessons, you want to summarize your whole story in one page. You will start with the end. Starting with the end will give you a clear trajectory. It will allow you to have the maximum predictability when you're writing your storyline. In order to review the cohesion of your last chapter, you want to focus on the issue in the last chapter, in chapter 10, and how it is resolved. Generally, the issue will be presented in the first scene of chapter 10 and solved in the third scene of chapter 10. Once you've done that, you want to do the same for the opening chapter. Return to chapter 1 after you finish chapter 10 and envision the atmosphere of the chapter, which will be presented in scene 1, and the characters, which will be presented in scene 1, 2, and 3 of chapter 1. Generally, you will want to present the protagonist in the first scene of the first chapter, a support or an antagonist in the second scene of the first chapter, and another support or another antagonist in the third scene of the first chapter. Once you've reviewed the general cohesion of chapter 10 and chapter 1 by applying the 3 rules of data, transition, and map use, you want to make sure that there's a cohesion between the opening and the end to turn your story into a cycle